Hey guys, welcome back. Drip Coach here, where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. Got a clip here with Michael Saylor on Bitcoin Magazine, and moving to a part of the interview where he kind of talks about this theme that we have in Bitcoin, and I use this phrase literally as part of my opening: "Don't trust, verify." But there is a level, like he states in here, where you have to trust something. And I just like the way he phrases it. I still believe that you can echo and use this sentiment, this ideology, this belief of don't trust, verify, but you have to understand like where it ends, because no matter what, there is a level of trust that has to be executed somewhere along the lines when you're talking about money, finances.
Yeah. Be interesting to see if there's a tipping point where everyone starts to come around, kind of like what you're saying. Sounds like you've seen that too, where skeptics maybe started 5 years ago. Now they're kind of proving them wrong. And a lot of the kind of what you're speaking to is the old guard, the banking industry. What about skepticism within the Bitcoin community specifically? Does any of that surprise you or stand out in particular?
You know, it's a vocal community. There are a lot of opinions. People say Bitcoin is money for enemies. There's been skepticism in the Bitcoin community since before Bitcoin, right? One could argue that Bitcoin was born out of skepticism, right? And so it's deep in the ethos and the culture, the idea to question everything, slay your heroes, don't trust, verify, right? So the whole idea of Bitcoin is, don't trust anybody, don't trust any institution. And so if you start asking the question, how do you create an economic protocol where you don't want to trust any of 8 billion people and any of 400 million companies and any government? That's an interesting question. I would say that skepticism has its place. It is motivational, but at some point it can become, what is the word?
Counterproductive, maybe?
Counterproductive idealism, right? And the truth of the matter is, you do need to trust the company to create the airplane you fly in. You do need to trust the company that creates the car you drive in. You do need to trust the dentist at some point because you can't. And you do need to trust the doctor because you can't take your own appendix out, or at least it's very rare, right? And so at some point...
Pause there real quick. So that is, the kind of the breaking point, like you said, in that ideology. Like it sounds good on paper. And I do believe it, like that healthy skepticism, that analytical criticism definitely needs to be applied to our current financial system, because without it, you wouldn't have people like Satoshi going down the rabbit hole, creating this in the first place. And then you wouldn't have this push towards global adoption and building things on it and all that stuff. Like you have to basically get to the breaking point where you're like, wait, the old system's broken. We need more transparency. We need more verification. But it's not a black and white. It's not, just completely trust 100% like we have with fiat and your banks to do the best interest for you. And we can't have, don't trust anything at all 100%, verify every freaking thing. Because like he said, you have to trust some people, some companies at some stage in the game. Like he mentions the doctor, your dentist, the plane you fly in, things of that nature. And also, to most of us, I can at least speak for myself, in this Bitcoin era, we're trusting the public audited code. Like we're leveraging our lack of ability to audit the code and understand the Bitcoin white paper and the actual math and how the nodes do all that stuff. Like we don't know any of that stuff. I can speak for myself. Maybe some of you watching do, but we're trusting that, X number of million other people have validated the code because it's public. But we can't verify that ourselves, right? So if it's don't trust, verify, that would mean me, need to learn Python or whatever code Bitcoin is written in and verify that for ourselves, right? And then even there, you're trusting that the Python code as a language for scripting and coding is sound. There's no quote unquote issues with it, right? So you can go down the rabbit hole all you want with where do you implement your own level of trust, but there has to be some trust in there somewhere.
you do have to trust something. And I would say, the more evolved way to look at Bitcoin is not that you want to embrace it and never trust anything. The real inspiration and the promise of Bitcoin is once you've embraced it, you have the option to extend and withdraw your trust, from time to time. And if you choose to not trust the government, you can relocate your Bitcoin to a different country. And if you choose to trust a custodian, you can locate your Bitcoin with them. And when you decide to stop trusting them, you can relocate your Bitcoin to any of 100,000 other entities. Or if you go through a period of life when you choose not to trust anyone, you can self-custody. And when you decide you don't trust yourself, you can transfer your custody to another family member, right? And change. So the real power of Bitcoin is optionality. And the reason we have the optionality is because the entire movement was born out of distrust. And so there is a yin and the yang, there is a dialect.
That's a powerful statement there too. It's like we wouldn't have this, and that's kind of what I was echoing, is that you wouldn't have it unless there was a distrust to begin with. But the real power is in the optionality, the ability to opt out, the ability to move somewhere else. Like that in and of itself, I think if that were the only thing Bitcoin allowed you to do, like that's enough. The fact that, like, I've been showing you guys, been living overseas for 10 years now, total, 9 in Cambodia and a year, whatever, you know what I mean? About 6 months here in Colombia, South America. And if I did not have a way to take my wealth with me, for example, if I was in gold, there would be no way for me to physically relocate that gold from the US to Cambodia to Colombia. It would have been confiscated at the airport. Yeah, you could wear it. I guess that's one way. So you could definitely get all of your gold on you and hope nobody robs you with a $5 rent attack. But the fact that you can opt out if you don't trust your government, and like he said, you can choose to custody your money with different exchanges. I've chosen to go with multiple. I've got Ledin, I've got Morpho, I've got Strike, I've got Binance, I've got Coinbase, I got the high yield Bitcoin wallets that are the BTC platform, and I've got cold storage. So if at any stage in the game, I don't trust any of those platforms, which I'm actually leaning towards with Coinbase before this cycle is over, I don't want any Bitcoin on Coinbase or in Morpho, you can move it. And that in of itself, like I said, is powerful enough to make Bitcoin utility like the end all be all. It doesn't need to do anything else. Like just the fact that you can take your wealth, move it, self-custody it, choose who you want to trust, and opt in or out literally at the click of a button.
Here. And you need a healthy degree of skepticism and distrust and cynicism. But once you've created the technology, you're not going to reach your full potential unless you work with other human beings, right? And so ultimately, when you decide that you're going to work with other human beings, either as a trusted custodian or a trusted hardware device manufacturer or a trusted hardware wallet, or you work with another corporation, it's a trusted team of people, whether they work on your teeth or work on your heart or manufacture the food or provide you with the aircraft, travel you need. At that point, you can reach your full potential, and you do it empowered, with property rights and with economic rights. And the reason that you will be able to trust them is because you have the option to withdraw your trust. Right? So I look at it as the great deterrent. If you think about gold and why gold failed, one reason gold.
I'm going to pause here because that's the part about gold is really, really valuable that I want to potentially cover separately. I think we can break that down in this video. But like you said, you are more empowered and you can do more, build more, move further, farther, faster when you leverage the trust of others as well. And everybody's working on a singular focused idea. So you're still trusting the person next to you to help you scale your idea and your implementation. You're trusting they won't sabotage it. But because there's a level of trust extended to other human beings, we have corporations, we have companies, we have singular focused goals that do insanely incredible things. Like there's no way any of that get done with an individual by themselves. So there is a separation of that moniker, don't trust, verify, that you can't take to its full extreme. But each person has to decide that. And what makes it powerful is, like Michael Saylor said, is the fact that you can remove your trust at any time, especially in the Bitcoin system. Now let's move to gold, because this was phenomenal. This really opened up my eyes to see how gold essentially failed previously and currently.
Failed is it's so incredibly difficult to custody. And so if you look at in the history of gold, in the 20s, you had 4 great central bankers, and the central banker in Germany was Schacht, and the central banker in the US was Ben Strong. And the world, was substantially on a gold standard, and the Germans had gold. And the French had gold, and the British had gold, the Americans had gold. But for the most part, the gold was either in London or in New York. The French gold was with the British or the Americans, or the German gold was with the Americans. So there's a famous story where Schacht traveled to New York City, met with the head of the Fed, Ben Strong, and Ben Strong wanted to show him the German gold, took him down into the basement of the New York Fed, and they couldn't find the gold. And of course, the message of the story is this: gold is so difficult to custody, countries couldn't figure out how to, like the entire country of Germany couldn't figure out how to custody their own gold, much less the 100,000 companies in Germany or the 60 million people in Germany. And so the reason gold failed was it was too slow and too difficult to custody, and therefore your property rights were always going to be impaired by a central actor. And
yeah, let that sink in, that like we were on a gold standard, but it was too cumbersome, too complicated for the individual to custody. So they handed that over to banks, and then banks handed over to central banks, and central banks created or became the gold reserve for countries, right? So out of all of the countries, you had 4 countries that held gold, but technically it was only in locations of 2. Like, how much more centralized can you get if like all of those individual people that couldn't hold their gold, didn't actually have it, moved it up the chain, and then even the countries, like with the utmost security and abilities, didn't have the ability to custody the gold themselves. Like, that is nuts. Fast forward or switch gears to Bitcoin. I can custody my Bitcoin literally in my head with just some keys, 12 words. And if I don't want that, then I can put it onto a ledger device. Yes, those words are still somewhere else, but I have the device, and it's just now a numerical passcode. If I don't want that, I can move it to, an exchange where it's just a login, and they can help me get in and out of that. But it's still there, technically. Most exchanges can verify their proof of reserves. But the point is, it's infinitely better and easier to custody and move. So if I don't trust that exchange with it, I can just withdraw it to cold storage myself, and I can see it on the blockchain that I do now have that Bitcoin. Like, yes, there's a learning curve with that, but it's not nearly as cumbersome as gold.
Imagine the entire world running on gold-based credit on a gold standard when all the gold in the world was sitting in London and New York City, and most of it was in New York City. And we can say, oh yeah, that's a bearer asset, but not really, because 40 million companies couldn't bear it. 400 million people couldn't bear it, right? And so Bitcoin, it represents the bearer instrument, but it really is practical for an individual to take custody, and it's practical for a company to take custody. And of course, I guess what I counsel to people that are idealists is they don't trust banks and they don't trust companies. But the point that I would make is, during the entire gold era, gold was so difficult to handle that no company could custody their gold, and no bank could. If we lived in a world where 40,000 banks were custodians of Bitcoin, you would have evolved from a world where there were like 8 or 6 custodians of Bitcoin custodians of gold in the entire world, right? And so I think that Bitcoin offers a promise of economic integrity, and
so that again is another kind of like mic drop moment. Where we are with Bitcoin is already orders of magnitude more decentralized than our previous multi-thousand year history with gold. Like you said, 400 million people couldn't custody it. The 40,000 banks couldn't custody it, or however many banks, 4,000 maybe, who knows. But even the central banks couldn't custody it. That's why we don't have a proof of reserve for the Federal Reserve right now, because it's probably not there. And if it is there, it's got to be tested for purity, because somebody probably swapped a couple out with lead bricks and painted it, right? So it's so hard that, like Michael Saylor said, it's like you cannot, like we couldn't get it right for all of human history. So already going from 4 central banks or 8 or whatever your magic number is that you believe actually have the gold, where we're at with Bitcoin, you can look on the blockchain and see millions of individual addresses. Granted, people can have multiple addresses, like myself, I have multiple addresses, but it's still orders of magnitude greater decentralization and self-custody availability than gold ever was or ever could be. And it's easier to fractionalize. Like it was so difficult to fractionalize gold. You know, if you wanted to only spend a fraction of your gold, it's like, yeah, how do you clip that off, weigh it and measure it, or whatever the case may be? So I just thought that was interesting, down the rabbit hole about how the don't trust but verify moniker could be a catch-22 to some degree, and how you can leverage trust and still how much better Bitcoin is compared to any other monetary standard that we've utilized for. All right, smash that HBO special, help brother out, like, subscribe, comment down below, and until next time, lift daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.